Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Of course, I am Carl and we are in another new year of vacuum exposition episodes and all things related. Now today, of course, is a special one. It is the first real video of 2025, and of course I have something special planned for today's video with the help of a good friend of mine. Now, we have a fantastic month ahead of us. We are doing a series this month, and you'll probably get clued in by the thumbnail on the video, but we are taking a look at the Hoover Convertible, the epitome of a vacuum cleaner, if you will. When you look up cartoons or clip art of a vacuum cleaner, you bring up a generic looking vacuum that resembles that of the Hoover Convertible. So we'll be taking a look at some special ones in my collection this month. There are so many in my collection currently that it is very hard to do just 1 month of them, but we will be looking at a few focused ones. For those that don't know what a convertible is, I have done a couple videos on them in the past, and please definitely go back and look at them. I've done a few really special ones in my collection already, but today's no different. But anyways, for those that tuned in for all of 2024, thank you again, and I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and New Year's. I know we had a fabulous one here, and now that the holidays are over, we can now buckle down and get ready for the next holiday. I guess we got Valentine's Day coming up, so maybe we'll do something related to that for February. But either way, we will be doing a lot in the next few months. Now, as I've said before, I will be going to Europe in March, so I will be out of the country for a majority of that month. However, I will, of course, have content for you guys while I'm gone, so that we don't get bogged down and we don't miss episodes. So, anyways, let's get on to our video for today. Before we start the exposition, we've got something special for you guys, of course. So let's get on to that and see what we got. All right, everybody. So we've got another episode of Vacuums Rescued. Now, of course, this couldn't have been brought to us without the help of my good friend Mitchell Armstrong. He does vacuum deals with all kinds of different shops and finds things all the time. And he's gotten to be good friends with a lot of the vacuum shop owners. Well, pretty much all throughout Washington. So when he went to a shop that he has been close to for many years, they presented him with a few vacuum cleaners. Now, after talking with him and cooking up some deals and whatnot, me and him struck up a deal for some of these things, and thankfully I was able to get some really cool things. So first, starting off from the furthest from me, the Vortec Force, made by Ghibli. It is an Italian-made vacuum cleaner that's kind of a spin-off of the Interstate Compact and TriStar machines. Same basic design, but very rugged. And my gosh, does this thing put out a lot of power. They came out in the early 90s, and then were released in a couple different iterations, this being one of the early ones towards the earlier part of 2004 or 5, I believe. I'll have to go back and look at my notes on this one, but that was an interesting one. This one was given to Mitchell because they said that the cord winder was not operating or broken or in some way, shape, or form, but upon me and Mitchell looking at it after he brought it, well, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it. So I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe it was just a way for them to trade it in at the vacuum shop. Unfortunately, it is missing the electric hose, the power nozzle, and the extension wands to go with said power nozzle. So it is just a straight suction canister, but it has been working wonders in my apartment. It really does a good job on those hard surfaces, and with that tool that it has, oh man, you couldn't ask for a better one. So very cool machine, and super happy to have one. Now, coming up next to it, we have a wind tunnel bagless, but this is using the twin chamber system, kind of like the one that we saw on that Turbo Power 4900 we took a look at about a month or so ago now. This is a really cool one. It is almost 100% complete. It is missing, I think, the crevice tool is the only thing that it needs now. And the only other thing was the actual twin chamber is missing a part, and I'll show you right here. Um, Now, as you can see, this is the twin chamber that Hoover came up with. Very, very interesting design. However, it is missing the cap. There's a cap that's supposed to go on top of this thing, and that's what kind of connects it to the machine. Now, there is a lock here, but it really doesn't do too much other than just keep this from falling off. So unfortunately, that still needs that part. So if there's any collectors out there watching that have a parts twin chamber Hoover, doesn't matter if it's one of the turbo power type variety with the soft guard bumper or whatever. This one is in desperate need of that. And I just absolutely love the color. So when Mitchell said that they had given that to him, I chatted with him a little bit and we came up with a deal. So those two came from a place called Everett Vacuum. They are a long-standing vacuum cleaner shop that unfortunately is changing ownership soon. So the original owners have decided to retire from the vacuum repair service industry. So they have sold it on to new owners. Not to change the subject, but we are on to the next one. Now, as we can see, we have a very old one right next to the wind tunnel. This is actually a Packard upright made by the Clement Manufacturing Company. They also made machines under the name Cadillac, of course, Clement, and then Packard. The rumor was that they were sold with cars of the same name, but I have yet to find any substantial evidence that actually reads that that was the case for them. One of these was actually on Pawn Stars once. A very similar model to it, but unfortunately, they said that to them, and they, I don't know, paid some exorbitant amount for it. So no, Packard vacuum cleaners are not worth like $300 or anything like that. Like I think they paid on Pawn Stars. They're worth quite a bit less. But either way, I digress. This particular machine came from my good friend Jared. He had picked it up from another vacuum shop, coincidentally, and they had given it to him. It had been found in somebody's attic, I believe. So it had not ran in many, 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 many years. And that very much showed. Jared tried to get it running, but unfortunately, as I recall, it popped a breaker. So he took it apart and it kind of stayed in pieces. And then he gave it to me one of the last times I was down there. So I went ahead and started putting it back together. But before that, taking it apart and figuring out what was going on with it. Found several different issues, but biggest one was the wiring had just basically fallen apart. After they get to be, over a certain age, this one being from, I believe, the 20s or 30s, the wiring seems to petrify and it starts to crumble away. And once that starts, it starts exposing the copper of the wire that it's trying to protect to each other. And then you have a circuit being completed and blowing a breaker in the house or wherever. So after that, I brought it, like I said, I started taking it apart and found that it needed some new carbon brushes, and overall the wiring that went up through the handle just needed to be replaced. There had been a really chintzy vacuum shop rebuild at some point using a Kirby cord that was done very poorly. They didn't even put wire nuts when they spliced wiring together, which I think is where the actual positive and negative leads were touching and blowing breakers. But either way, I got it running. And here's a quick clip of it running right here, actually. It lives. But it's actually running really, really good. I did go ahead and grease the bearings up on it, so it is actually functioning pretty well now. There is a couple things I need to finish up on it, especially with the cosmetics of it, but overall, it's really come together, and I'm glad to get another one of these running. Okay, so last but certainly not least, we have this actually pretty nice looking Royal 801. Now, Royal didn't make just residential machines. They also made commercial variants as well, which is what they made most recently, this being one of the more residential machines. Now, this was one that Mitchell found in another vacuum shop. Actually, the same one he found, the 505 that we did a video on last week. And it was in their basement kind of trade-in room, and they just wanted it gone, so they let him have it. And after some thought, he asked me if I wanted it. And I was hesitant, but kind of glad I still grabbed it because it is in really, really nice shape. The only issue with it that I've been able to deduce, as well as Mitchell, is it is unfortunately missing the fan and fan pulley. So I think this may have been one that went in for servicing. Maybe the fan broke, and I believe maybe on this model, the fan and the pulley is one. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to take this one apart, but as far as I can tell, it's going to need a new fan and pulley. But otherwise, it looks 100% complete. It has a pretty nice bag on it. Not sure if that's original or not, but you know, it's in pretty decent shape overall. And it definitely has a certain charm about it. The look of them, I think this is maybe 60s or 70s. I'm not 100% sure on my royal history. Maybe if there are people out there that know better than I, please chime in. But either way, it is a pretty nice example, and I do want to try to see what I can do to keep it at least put together and running. And who knows what will happen after that? Maybe we'll send it on down the road to another collector that's looking for one. But either way, it's another one that I want to try fixing as best as I can. So, but that's what we have for our vacuums rescued for today. I know it's not a ton of machines, but you know, it's always good to start the year off with something cool, you know, whether that be a project or a collection piece. And good many of these are going to be collection pieces, but either way, I love to show you guys what I come up with, you know. So, but anyways, let's get on to our vacuum exposition for today and check out another really cool one. All right, everybody, so here is what we have for today. Now, I've told several people about this machine that I had found this on one of my treks. I was actually going down to visit some family in Portland, and this happened to be on Marketplace. And the good thing is, this was actually a model that I had been looking for, so it was serendipitous that this one even came available. Now, what we're looking at is about a 1977 or 1978 Hoover Convertible, of course, our series for the month, model 4123. Now, the 4123 was actually a pretty significant model. Now, for those that are not collectors, it won't make a big difference. There's not a whole lot of historical significance to this particular model in terms of the company or anything like that. But for collectors, this is very significant. Now, previous to this, the Hoover Convertible had been a long-standing vacuum cleaner for Hoover. They came out in the 50s, and they were the quintessential vacuum cleaner, as I stated earlier. And this one was no different. This one, of course, having the early style rounded hood that you would have seen on things like the Model 65. And I actually did do a video on a golden 65 towards the beginning of my channel a long time ago. So if you haven't checked that video out, definitely go back and review that one. It was a fun one to do. But this was the last of that style hood. After this, they went on to what they call the square hood or the full hood or the Ranger hood, all different versions of the Hoover Convertible that would in its evolution. And they did have the full hood as well as square hooded convertibles at this time, but this was almost like a promo model or promotional model. I've been told by a couple different people that it was one of their promo models, but this was a very special model in terms of collectability because not only was it the last to have this rounded early style hood, it was also the last to have the metal base. Now, Hoover convertibles, starting in the 50s, would utilize a metal base just like this. They would have different style medallion logos for the front, but overall, you would have had a metal base, as well as for the Hoover seniors and whatnot in the UK, using kind of the same thing. Now, this particular style with a metal base would continue on all the way up into the 70s, The way they would have done it was essentially you would have taken a completely paintless casted metal base, and then you would have put a plastic hood over top. So you wouldn't have even seen it. It just would have been underneath everything, which I tend to prefer the metal-based convertibles just because they do feel a little bit more sturdy, a little bit more weight on the floor. But that's just my opinion. I know a lot of other collectors, though, that do agree that they do prefer the metal bases. But this was meant to be the last one. Now, this machine being that strange promo model, you did get some other options that were kind of weird for this. The big one, in my opinion, is the headlight. Now, as you can see, there's a big darker section towards the front. It says convertible on it. And normally that would be where a headlight would go on a convertible. However, this particular one doesn't have a headlight at all. So they put in a color matched or kind of color matched lens to go in to mock a headlight without putting a headlight in. Hoover did that with a couple other machines over the years, not quite like this, but they would put in mock headlight lenses where, there should have been, but there wasn't. So that was a big, big factor on this one. Of course, this one came out in that red color. I believe it was poppy red, and it matched a few other different uprights that I actually have in my collection. But that was one big thing about this, set it apart from others. Now, the other thing is it only had what we call a half bumper. Now, in the collecting world, Hoover convertibles have either a full bumper or a half bumper. Full bumper meaning that the bumper right here, this red bumper right here, would continue all the way around, whereas a half bumper, well, it just goes to about the halfway point back here. So this one, of course, has a red bumper riveted on around it, but it is very interesting for a promo model because promo models or promotional models, they weren't always high option. So even if they were like a special edition of some sort, they didn't always have all the special edition options. I've seen several different promo models that were so basic with shorter cords, no headlights, basic bag setup, and like 3-position height adjustment, which this one actually does have a height adjustment, but this is just a 3-position height adjustment. So you got your low, normal, and high that would essentially crank up the back so that it would just dig the front end down or up, so you would get into the carpet more. Now with this machine, I believe it did have a slightly different bag. I believe instead of saying Hoover Top Fill up here, it would have said Hoover Convertible, but still in red. So that is something that I'll have to look into and see what I can do about changing, but either way, it does present very well, so I'm not super concerned. With these rounded hooded convertibles, it is actually kind of interesting because normally they would have had what you call a molded plug. So the plug you'd plug in the wall, it would be molded and had like Hoover embossed into it. But being as this was from the 70s, they had what we called the square plug. So it wouldn't have had Hoover on it, but it would have had kind of a very square-shaped plug. This would be consistent with all Hoovers, going from the mid to late 70s all the way up into the 90s. So interesting to see that piece on a machine that's basically styled from the 50s. Now, there was a machine very similar to this that came out in, I believe, the mid 70s. It was the Model 574, which is one that's very much on my list. They're very, very rare, made in very, very limited quantities. I believe they were a catalog specific, as if I'm correct. Not 100% sure, but they're very rare. I've only seen a couple of them in pictures, and if they ever come up for sale, they're usually pretty high dollar. But this is very, very similar to that particular model. The only differences being, of course, the bag would have had what we called a thin top or small top bag and used a different setup than this one. It would, of course, had a headlight and the larger medallion style logo on the front. So now, as you can see, the U4123 didn't get a whole lot of options, as opposed to other machines around the same time. But it still is an interesting machine in its own way, with just the coloring, the interesting options, the lack of a headlight at the front, which makes it more of a rarer machine amongst convertible collectors. and it is definitely one that I will be holding on for mine. At some point, I will get all of my convertibles out and display all of them together because I want to say I have 200-ish convertibles now. So I probably have a lot more than a lot of people, but this is definitely one that I wanted to put into my collection. So let's get on to our run demo for today and see how this one does on the floor. Well, everybody, we have got the Hoover Convertible model U4123 all plugged in and ready to go. So let's see how it does on the floor. And there you have it, folks. The model U4123 still pulling that carpet up and getting the grit from down below, just like it was back in 1978. So I hope you enjoyed our little run demo for today. Well, everybody, we were able to take a look at a really, really cool machine today. The 1978 Hoover Convertible Model U4123. While it was a very short-lived and low option machine, it still was an important one for collectors at least. But I'm sure there was other people that did come to like this. They weren't necessarily interested in the collectability of it for the future. I'm sure there was employees that were happy to be able to see the last of this style go off the assembly line and into consumers' hands. Just kind of being the end of an era, really. So it is a really, really cool one. Of course, I had a great story behind it with kind of finding it on a little trip with my family. These old vacuum cleaners, you know, when you find them and give them a story or give them kind of a, oh, I remember when I found that kind of a thing, is always important. And that's kind of what we hold as collectors and keep that importance. So, you know, it may only hold importance to me in that case, but it definitely was a really, really fun little find for a otherwise vacuumless journey. So, but either way, this one was a really, really fun one to be able to show you guys, and especially get out and run across the floor again. But we will continue to take a look at more convertibles next week. I've got a couple of them in mind that I've been wanting to show you guys, so we will take a look at those soon. I hope you all enjoyed our little vacuums rescued portion today, of course. I love being able to show you guys the machines that I've been finding lately, and I seem to find them pretty frequently. So I have a lot of friends to be thankful for that have helped me along the way, that help me find things, and it's always good to be able to, you know, get something new, something interesting, so I can show you guys and give some meaning to some of these old sweepers, you know. So, but either way, happy New Year's to everybody. I hope you guys all have a year of great finds. And of course, I will show you all my finds as time goes on. But thank you all for watching again today. I hope you all have a great rest of your week as well as a great rest of your weekend. And we'll meet again next Sunday, same time, same place, same guy, different vacuum or vacuums. And we'll catch you again later. Have a great rest of your day, y'all.